Let's not mince words. What you're about to hear is the financial equivalent of a seismic shockwave rippling through the world of speculative currencies, and if you have even a single Iraqi dinar note in your possession, or if you've ever considered acquiring any, you cannot afford to look away for the next few minutes because the Central Bank of Iraq has just dropped a bombshell that has sent the entire investment community into a frenzy, confirming that the long prophesied, endlessly debated revaluation of the Iraqi dinar is now entering what they are officially terming its final phase, with a hard deadline set for the year 2026, a date that is no longer a vague promise whispered in online forums but a concrete pillar of their economic modernization plan, a timeline backed by the full force of the Iraqi government and, more importantly, by the brutal pressures of international financial obligations that they can no longer postpone or ignore. Now, I know what you're thinking. We've heard these stories before, for over a decade, tales of an imminent revaluation that would turn small investments into life-changing fortunes, stories that have created a roller coaster of hope and despair for holders of the IQE. But this time, it's fundamentally different, and the shock isn't just the 2026 deadline itself, but the specific, data-driven reasons why this date is now immovable, creating a perfect storm of economic necessity and geopolitical forcing that makes this final phase unlike any previous period of speculation. The twist, the one critical piece of information that most mainstream financial news outlets are completely missing as they report on this update, is that this isn't primarily about making dinar investors rich. That's a potential side effect, a collateral consequence of a much larger, more desperate geopolitical chess game that Iraq is forced to play, and the 2026 deadline is directly tied to their staff-level agreement with the International Monetary Fund, a multi-billion-dollar bailout style program that mandates, in no uncertain terms, the elimination of the country's complex multi-exchange rate system and the establishment of a stable, unified, and transparent exchange rate as a non-negotiable precondition for continued financial support and, crucially, for restructuring their crippling national debt. If you dive into the deep end of financial forums on platforms like Reddit or specialized Forex trader groups, the buzz is no longer about it but about the shocking quantum of the change. Analysts are poring over the CBI's recent Towards a New Iraq financial stability report, and they're pointing to a little-noticed section that discusses the need to align the Iraqi dinar with its fundamental purchasing power parity, which, when calculated against the nation's vast oil and gas reserves, estimated at over 145 billion barrels, and its projected GDP growth once its oil infrastructure is fully modernized, suggests a theoretical value that is orders of magnitude higher than the current official rate of 1,310 dinars to $1, creating a wave of speculative fever that is both exhilarating and dangerously volatile. But here's the counter-narrative, the sobering reality check that you must hold on to tightly. This final phase is also the most perilous, because the path to a stable, revalued currency is paved with immense economic pain, including the high probability of initial, controlled devaluation to unify the rates before any significant upward revaluation can occur, a process that could wipe out the savings of unprepared Iraqis and trap over-leveraged foreign investors who bought dinars at highly inflated prices from unofficial dealers. The Central Bank of Iraq is walking a tightrope, and their official statements, which we have meticulously analyzed, are masterclasses in cautious ambiguity, simultaneously reassuring international partners of their commitment to reform while trying to manage the explosive expectations of a global base of retail investors whose collective actions could destabilize their entire monetary transition if panic selling or buying occurs at the wrong moment. This is the core of the 2026 shock. It's a forced march towards fiscal sanity, driven by the IMF and the World Bank, and the fate of the dinar in your hands is merely a tiny variable in a colossal equation of national survival, which is why understanding the real drivers, not the hype-filled YouTube videos or the gurus selling premium packages, is the only way you will navigate the turbulent 2 years that lie ahead, a period that will separate the informed from the reckless. So, if the first shock was the immovable 2026 deadline, then the second, even more jarring revelation that is currently causing sleepless nights for major hedge funds and currency speculators is the specific mechanism the Central Bank of Iraq is actively testing to achieve this revaluation, a mechanism not seen since the Kuwaiti dinar was successfully reinstated after the Gulf War, and it involves a deliberate, engineered strategy to create a tangible scarcity of the physical currency notes in Circulation, a move that fundamentally alters the supply and demand dynamics, is a classic, albeit high-risk, central bank tool to trigger a sharp appreciation in value. But here's the twist that most investors are completely unaware of. This scarcity isn't just about reducing the money supply. It's a dual-pronged attack aimed directly at dismantling the multi-billion-dollar black market economy that has strangled Iraq's financial system for 2 decades, a shadow economy that thrives on disparity between the official rate and the black market rate and is funded by the physical dinars hoarded by militias, corrupt officials, and sanction-evading enemies, making this monetary policy also a profound national security operation. The data emerging from Iraq over the last quarter is startling and confirms this strategy is already in motion. The CBI's own financial statements show a massive, coordinated withdrawal of high-denomination dinar notes from circulation, with over 4 trillion dinars worth of physical cash being taken out of the system and replaced, in a much slower and more controlled manner, with lower denomination notes and digital currency equivalents through their new electronic payment platforms. Deliberate constriction of physical liquidity that is designed to force the hand of black market operators who rely on pallets of cash to conduct their business and cannot easily transition to a digital trail that would expose them to international sanctions and government scrutiny. This is the real story behind the rate update that shocked investors. It wasn't just a number on a screen, it was the first visible tremor of this liquidity squeeze. And if you analyze the chatter on Forex Factory forums and other trading hubs, the smart money isn't just watching the official CBI announcements. They are monitoring the Baghdad and Erbil black market rates in real time, where the spread between the official and unofficial rate has begun to violently fluctuate, compressing at certain moments, which is a technical indicator that the CBI's pressure campaign is starting to bite, creating massive arbitrage opportunities for those with the stomach and the means to navigate this incredibly risky landscape. But this is where the narrative takes another dark turn, a reality completely glossed over by the overly optimistic dinar gurus. This engineered scarcity and the subsequent push for a strong currency is poised to trigger a devastating wave of inflation within Iraq itself in the short to medium term, because a stronger dinar makes imports cheaper, which sounds good on paper, but will instantly cripple local Iraqi farmers, manufacturers, and small businesses who cannot possibly compete with a flood of cheap Turkish, Iranian, and Saudi goods, potentially leading to widespread business failures and unemployment, a bitter pill that the Iraqi government is willing to swallow for the long-term goal of international credibility and stopping the capital flight enabled by a weak currency. This internal contradiction is the CBI's greatest challenge, and their official statements are now filled with warnings about temporary market dislocations and periods of adjustment, which is central bank language for significant economic pain ahead for the average Iraqi citizen, whose plight is rarely a consideration in the online forums where investors celebrate every sign of a rising rate. The historical parallel is chilling. When the Kuwaiti dinar was revalued after the liberation from Iraq, it was a surgical process backed by immense sovereign wealth and a small, unified population, whereas Iraq is attempting this monumental task amidst active political fragmentation, powerful rogue elements who profit from the status quo, and a population of over 40 million people who will bear the brunt of this economic shock therapy, making the 2026 timeline not just a financial target but a political high-wire act of unimaginable complexity. Therefore, the shocking update for investors isn't just the potential for profit, it's the grim understanding that the very mechanism that could increase the value of your dinar investment is the same mechanism that could destabilize an entire nation, tying your financial fate directly to the success or failure of one of the most ambitious and risky monetary transitions in modern history, a bet not just on a number, but on the CBI's ability to navigate a minefield of social, political, and economic chaos. Therefore, we arrive at the ultimate, inescapable conclusion and the most critical question you must now ask yourself: what is your personal exit strategy? Because the final, shocking truth that separates the few who will potentially realize gains from the vast majority who will be left with nothing but devalued paper or broken promises is that the revaluation event itself, if and when it happens, will not be a single, glorious moment where you drive to the bank a millionaire. It will be a chaotic, confusing, and incredibly narrow window of opportunity. A volatile period of hours or maybe days where banks and governments will impose immediate capital controls, transaction limits, and know your customer audit so severe that the vast, decentralized global network of dinar investors will find themselves trapped in a labyrinth of regulations, unable to liquidate their holdings at the theoretical new rate. A scenario that is already being wargamed by financial institutions and one that is starkly absent from the euphoric discussions on investor forums. The data from similar, though smaller scale, historical currency events is brutally clear. When countries like Zimbabwe attempted its currency reform or when Egypt floated its pound, the initial spike was followed by a rapid adjustment, and only the institutional players with pre-established channels and lightning-fast execution were able to capitalize, while retail investors were left navigating a frozen, panicked system, a lesson we must apply directly to the Iraqi dinar speculation. This is the final, hard reality the CBI's 2026 timeline imposes upon you. It is your countdown clock not to wealth, but to preparation, a deadline by which you must have your ducks in a row, knowing exactly which financial institution, if any, will actually facilitate the exchange, having all your documentation proving the legitimate source of your funds in perfect order, and understanding the staggering tax implications that will immediately devour a significant portion of any gain you might realize, a logistical nightmare that is far less glamorous than dreaming of Lamborghinis but is the absolute determinant of your success or failure. The twist, the final one I will leave you with, is that the greatest threat to your investment right now is not the CBI failing, but the explosion of sophisticated scams and counterfeit dinar schemes that are preying on the renewed hype, with fake, certified dealers selling worthless printer paper and creating fraudulent buyback guarantees that will vanish the moment the real revaluation pressure hits, making the due diligence you conduct in the next 24 months more valuable than the dinar notes themselves. This entire journey, from the IMF's forced timeline to the engineered scarcity and the looming social cost, crystallizes into one single, actionable insight for you, the investor: the time for passive speculation is over. The period between this very moment and the end of 2026 is your operational phase, your time to transition from a hopeful spectator to a strategic executor, to verify your holdings, to consult with an international tax attorney and a financial advisor who specializes in foreign currency, not a YouTube guru, and to build a concrete, written plan for every conceivable outcome, including the very real possibility that the revaluation happens at a rate so minimal it doesn't even cover your initial investment and the fees you've paid over the years. This is the unvarnished truth the algorithm doesn't often promote, because it's not about clickbait, it's about cold, hard financial preparedness. And this is precisely why you need to stay connected to this channel. We have navigated the geopolitics, the central bank mechanics, and the harsh realities together in this video, but this is just the beginning of a rapidly evolving story. The deep dive analysis must continue, and you cannot afford to miss a single update. So, if you've made it this far and you recognize the critical importance of being truly informed, not just hyped, then you need to take 2 concrete actions right now. First, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell notification, because in the coming weeks, we will be dissecting the specific documentation you need to start gathering. We will be interviewing a former central bank official on the practicalities of large-scale currency exchange, and we will be exposing the latest scam tactics in real time, content you will not find anywhere else that is designed solely to give you a tangible, practical edge. And second, and most importantly, scroll down to the comments section right now and type exit strategy, because that simple act tells me you are serious about this, that you're moving beyond hope and into action, and it allows me to better understand what you need most, so I can tailor the next crucial video specifically to guide you through building yours. The clock is ticking to 2026. Don't just watch it pass by.